Welcome back to The Real Story, a response to the response. The White House trying to clarify some statements that the president made that this Kosher Deli standoff in Paris last month was done simply at random and not because the owner was Jewish. ABC's John Carl and our own Ed Henry barraged White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest for an explanation how this was anything but.
The adverb that the president chose was used to indicate that the individuals who were killed in that terrible, tragic incident were killed not because of who they were, but because of where they randomly happened to be. There were people other than just Jews who were in that deli.
Where they randomly happened to be. Well, that didn't satisfy many critics. So reporters then looked to the State Department, possibly for a clarification.
If I remember the victims specifically, there were not all victims of one background or one nationality. So I think what they mean by that is, I don't know that they spoke to the targeting of the grocery store or that specifically, but the individuals who were impacted.
Time for some real talk now. Chris Plante, syndicated radio host of The Chris Plante Show. Leslie Marshall, syndicated host of The Leslie Marshall Show and Fox News contributor. What, Chris?
What is a really good question. It's amazing. It was a kosher market. A radical Islamist enters. He murders 4 people. All 4 of them are Jewish. They're all buried in Israel. And these guys can't bring themselves to acknowledge the glaringly obvious that this was an act of radical Islamic terrorism perpetrated against people because they were Jewish in a target that was a Jewish target.
Right.
And it is just dumbfounding. It is
okay.
Beyond comprehension.
Well, let me head over to Leslie. Leslie, why? Why do they do this?
Well, first of all, I have to say, maybe I'm the only person in the world, okay, I'll admit, that took it entirely differently than everyone has. I took it to say that he randomly killed everybody. Now, of course, assuming, and I agree with Chris, obviously an act of anti-Semitism. It's a kosher market in a very Jewish area of Paris. Okay. I've been in that market. The 4 victims are Jewish.
You're giving the president, you're giving the president a bit of a pass.
Standing there?
You're giving the president a bit of a pass with the word randomly. But what about Earnest and Psaki? Look at these tweets. Here's Earnest. Our view has not changed. Terror attack at Paris kosher market was motivated by anti-Semitism. POTUS didn't intend to suggest otherwise. Huh? And then there's this tweet. We have always been clear that the attack on the kosher grocery store was an anti-Semitic attack that took the lives of innocent people. That from Jen Psaki. That is not what we just heard, Leslie.
Right.
Oh, I agree with you, and that's what they should have said. They should have got their facts together before they came out and said what they said.
We all know, as lay people, we know the facts. It happened January 7th, 2015.
Exactly. It's common sense. It's common sense. It's, again, a kosher market in a Jewish area, and I think that to point out that there are people of different, religious backgrounds in the market is fine, but certainly this was an act of anti-Semitism, even if the terrorist didn't say, "Are you Jewish?" before pulling
the Gentiles were not killed. The other people of other faiths and other backgrounds were not murdered.
Even if they were, we're missing the bigger point here. We're missing the bigger point. Even if other people who weren't Jewish were killed. Moving on to this, NBC is suspending nightly news anchor Brian Williams 6 months now without pay after he admitted to stretching the truth over the story, as we all know, the chopper thing. All right. Now, Chris, this just coming out now that NBC widening their probe to include Williams' expense accounts. What does this mean?
Yeah. Oh, this is this is the kiss of death. They've loosed the internal IRS on them. You know, when the accounting department is let loose on you, you know you're in big trouble. And it's, I mean, there's also Katrina and Israel, Hezbollah. There are other stories that fables he's been telling, but. Trust me on this, and I think you know, Gretchen, I worked in a news organization for 17 years. When they sick the accountants on you, they're out to get you, and they're going to get you. You don't comb through the expense accounts of the senior anchor, for God's sake.
Well, it's a very interesting development that's happening right now, Leslie.
Yeah.
I have to say, to quote Jon Stewart, I think this is a sin, not a crime, and I would prefer to see an investigation toward any employee in any industry, ours especially, be completed before they make a decision. Obviously, the decision is because they've lost money. They certainly lost audience members and ratings. But I agree with Chris. When you have the accountants, you have a reason for cause with this $million dollar contract he has to say, you know what, Brian, see ya, and we don't have to write a bigger check when you leave.
Okay.
They're building the case against him. They're going to get him.
Okay. We'll have to see how that plays out. Chris, Leslie, thank you so much.